I could not think of a better way to kick off the latest episode of The Fighter versus the Writer. I'm Damon Martin. He is UFC legend Matt Brown, as I always say. But this week, a little special episode because it is the first time we're doing an episode where Matt Brown is now officially retired from the UFC. Matt, big announcement came out a couple days ago. We always start with playing your intro on the show. What better way to debut it than do it on a day like today?
Yes, you had to wait till I fucking retired to finally do it. Is that what I had to do to get my song played?
I had to make sure it was officially done. I was like, all right, now we can play the fucking intro. You know, we're not gonna. Jamie Jackson's not gonna come after me for copyright. So I gotta. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think Jamie's. I would imagine he probably appreciates it. I don't know if it's a recording studio, might not, but whatever. If they come out for copyright, like we'll throw them $100 and tell them fuck off.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So, of course, the big announcement came out over the weekend. We're going to talk and I'm going to pretend like I didn't know any of this was happening because we've talked about this for quite a while, like beyond, like when we're not on the air, just talking as friends. I know you've been talking about this for a while. We've talked many things, so I don't want to divulge information or anything. But of course, the news came out on Saturday. Before we start, I should have just recorded. I know we said we should have just recorded this place. Can you tell the world what you were doing when you decided to put the message out on Instagram that you were retiring from UFC, from MMA?
Yeah, so we were just talking about it off air there, and it was, I was sitting in my daughter's soccer game, and there was soccer game. She had a double header, but they were hour and a half apart, and you know me pretty well, Damon. I'm not really the type to sit there and mingle with the soccer moms and soccer dads. So I'm kind of sitting there by myself for like an hour and a half and thought, I think I need a social media post. How about I make a retirement post? and did it right then. And like I said, my phone actually overheated. And since we were just talking about a minute ago, I don't know if that was from the amount of notifications. My phone just blew the fuck up. It felt... It was really surreal, man. You don't realize how many people care about you and how many lives you touched and how many people you inspired. But it was also sitting in 80-degree sun, and I kept checking my phone, like, why is it ringing again? I didn't really think about it too much, which in hindsight was kind of foolish of me, but I just didn't think anything of it. I was like, I'm just doing a social media post, and maybe it's because it's been on my mind so long that, not so long, but it's been on my mind pretty heavily. And so I thought to me, I'm like, well, I'm just doing another social media post. And turns out that was a pretty big post.
If you know Matt Brown, and I feel like I know you pretty well, that is a very Matt Brown thing to do. That is that is knowing you. That is Matt Brown. Like when you're just like, oh yeah, I text you afterwards, like right after it. I was like, dude, like, what's going on here? And like, it's just out of nowhere. And like, I was like, what am I thinking of? This is totally what you would do. Like, there's not going to be some grand announcement or like, I'm drawing a press conference to make a major announcement about my career. No, I'm at my daughter's soccer game. Fuck it. Let's just make a social media post and I'll announce that I'm retiring.
And you know what? Looking back on it a little bit, kind of being at my daughter's soccer game probably made me feel a little bit more than usual, because like sitting there, I sent a short video to Chael Pisson, and today actually for ESPN, he requested it from me, and I was sitting at my daughter's soccer game again. It's fucking soccer shit, but and one of the things I said to him was, I just feel like I'm in a new season of my life, and sitting at my daughter's soccer game, I'm sitting there healthy, no black eyes, not thinking about, man, I gotta go train tonight, or getting up early so I can, lift some weights or go for a run or something. It's like I just had a relaxed day, and it just felt different. I was way more engaged with the game, way more engaged with my daughter. Unfortunately, engaged a little bit more, mingled with the soccer moms and dads who I love, but at the same time, just not really my people. But they're great people though. And, I think that kind of maybe even actually just kind of triggered it a little bit, to be honest.
So I don't want to turn this is, obviously our podcast and we kind of go back and forth there. I don't want to turn this into a full on interview but I think there's gonna be a lot of questions people want to know answers to. Because again, you're an icon of the sport. You've been around forever. When I wrote the article about it, I was like, man, like I was like, God, it just seems like like you've just been a staple to UFC for so long. Like you've been through a lot of stages to UFC. So even though everyone has to call it a career at some point, like you're one of those guys where it's almost like, yeah, he'll just fight forever. Like Matt's just gonna fight forever. How far back does it date that this was popped in your head? Because I know like you made the announcement, but like, and I'm saying this as your friend and as the guy who does a podcast. Again, we've talked about this off the air. I know this wasn't like a snap. A lot of people assume while the decision to post it on Instagram was kind of like in the moment, the contemplation of retirement has happened for a while now. I want to be clear about it because I think a lot of people were just like, oh, he just decided one Saturday afternoon, I'm going to retire. I know personally this is dating back a lot further.
No, that's exactly right. And I mean, it started dating back a little ways when I kind of started in the last, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years when I've really started learning a lot about financial um, health and how to handle your finances and how to grow businesses and how to get wealthy, and I'm not gonna. That's not turned into a fight or pay thing. That kind of is what it is. But there's just other ways to do it. And when you think about it long term, the issue that we run into as fighters is we do get these lump sums, and it sounds like a great thing. Um, say you make $200,000 in a night, right? Obviously, you have to do a whole training camp. You have to build your brand so you can make $200,000. Like all those things. But let's say you make $200,000. Well, that's just short term thinking. You can make $50,000 over 4 years, and ideally, you build a job or some sort of source of income where you're making $50,000 a year, and it takes 4 years to catch up to that one camp that you did, but it's also going to last another 4 years too, and then another, and then another. So just things like this kind of started popping into my mind, and I've handled my money pretty well so far. So I have a lot of things set up, and I've kind of been setting up for this moment for a lot of years. Opening my gym, buying Airbnbs, working in real estate, networking, using my brand to meet other people and use that to build my network. Um, and it all it came down to was like, okay, when I can definitely fund a lifestyle post fighting, then I know that I'll at least financially be ready. Now, the other side was, okay, now being mentally ready and keeping it real, like you're never mentally ready. Fighting is a drug, 1,000%. It's an addiction, and that high that you get, like when you do cocaine, you get a high the first time, and then you're chasing that high for the rest of the night and into the morning, and then maybe next afternoon, and it can get that can be a big downward spiral, and that's what happens in fighting. You're just chasing that. You got it in you to get back to where you once were your former glory, but do you really have it in you? You constantly think you do, right? Because you do great in the gym, or you're feeling great, all these different things, but you're just constantly chasing that high again. And that was something I had a short discussion with Brian Carroll, world record squat power lifter, had the world record in the squat for a long time. I think he was the first to do over 1,000 pounds, I want to say. And he was talking about that. He was like, when I stepped away from the sport, I'd just been chasing that squat record for so long. He's like, you're not going to do it again. Like you peaked out. So it's just a drug that you're chasing.
Yeah. And I know that like as a fighter, you like when you get offers to fight, like again, because I've been around you for many, many years. We go back since the Ultimate Fighter days, and like you would get genuinely excited. Like when they call you with an offer, you get genuinely excited to fight. But I know in recent years, like for an example, I know I'm not telling anything out of secret. We've talked about this on the podcast. After you knocked out Court McGee last year, I know you had told me, and I know I'm 99.9% sure you talked about this on the podcast, was that like you didn't want to fight again over the summer because you had your kids. You wanted to spend time with your kids and do that. And like you had things going on with them. And so you're like, I'm not going to fight. So like priorities change. Like, if they 10, 15 years ago, they would have called you and said, okay, you knock out Court McGee in May, let's fight again in August. You'd be like, fuck yeah, let's go. But priorities change, things change, and so your mind changes. Like when that mentality changes, right? Like where your fighting isn't like, not saying you don't get excited for it. Obviously, I know you're still a savage, you still love it, but the priorities of your life change. Where like if they call you right now and said, "Hey Matt, we got to fight for you," would you feel the same now that you did 5 years ago? And I know that again, I'm not talking out of turn here. I know that has changed for you a little bit. Just different things happening in your life.
No, that's exactly right. And they actually offered me a fight a few months back, and that was it. That was exactly when I knew, because I got the email, and when I got the email, the first thing that crossed my mind was like, "Boy, I could use that money," but I didn't get that chill run down my spine. Right? I didn't take a deep breath, like, "Here we fucking go, baby." You know what I mean? And back in the day when I would get that call, I mean, it was usually really quick after previous fight. Uh, there, my fingers would tingle, and I'd usually go straight to the gym right then. It could be 10 o'clock at night, and like, okay, well, I'm going to the track and I'm going to go do some sprints. Like I'm ready to fucking go. And I would always overtrain the first few weeks. I would go until I was run the fuck down, and then build myself. Okay, slow down, and then build myself back up. But yeah, so with that said, the feeling wasn't the same as before. So, like you said, the priorities change, and when you talk about the priorities changing, that's something I'm going to talk about. I'm going to do a podcast, which we talked about for a long time. I have you as a guest on there regularly, and I'm gonna have my own podcast at some point, and how those priorities change, throughout your life. And one of the things I'll talk about, which would be kind of a deep conversation, really, is because I know so many men relate to this, but no one ever talks about it, is divorce, right? And that changes everything in your life. And I'm not going to get deep into it right now, but when I do a podcast, I do want to touch on that, because I think men don't speak out enough about the vulnerabilities and what we go through. A lot of us hold it in and just want to stand up and act like we're the baddest dude in the world. But like, I already know I'm one of the baddest dudes in the world, so I don't really have no shame. You know what I mean? So I'll just speak it out loud, and I don't really give a fuck. So, so things like that, when you talk about priorities changing, is where I'm getting at with that is, kids getting older, you want to be present for your kids. You need to be. That's what your job is as a parent. And it starts becoming about others. And that's just the season of life that I feel like I'm in now, right? When I said I woke up and what I felt was, boy, I could use that money. I'm thinking, well, I could use that money for my kids, like I could set them up with something. Like, I don't give a fuck if I have money or not, but, and that's where you realize, okay, the priorities change. So if I can make money for them in other ways, but be more present for them, then that's a win-win situation for me.
Absolutely. And I know that when you talk about like when that call comes in and they say, hey, we got to fight for it, and you're not getting that same chill down your spine, that same excitement that you used to get. I know you don't get nearly enough credit for this. And I know I say you're not like an ego guy, but I'll say this now because we talk a lot. And I say, you don't get nearly enough credit for how smart you are, because you read a lot, you study a lot. Like, you're a very, very intelligent guy, and you're not built like a lot of guys where this is all you have, but also like you love it, but you're also smart enough to know when that, because again, I don't want to keep speaking out of turn because we have these conversations privately, but when that call comes in and they say, hey man, we got to fight for you, and you don't get that chill down your spine right away, you know, like, you know, something's changed, you know, like, okay, even in that moment, you didn't just say, okay, I'm retiring, like I'm done right then and there. You gave it some time, but even in that moment, when you don't get that chill anymore, you knew something was changing, because that was a constant, right? Like, that was pretty much a constant your entire career. When they would call you and say, hey, Matt, we got to fight for you, you're like, let's fucking go. And when that changes, you knew the next phase was coming, whether it was 3 months later, 6 months later, whatever the timeline was between that call and now when you're saying I'm done, you know, fighting. You knew something was changing, because that was a pivotal moment, right? Like, that's a huge moment.
Yeah. You know what? That's a great point, because what happens is through social media, through all the people that know me, there's an identity built with those people, and that feeds your ego, right? Everybody looks up to you as a fighter. Everybody, you know, wants to be around you, and they build this identity as you are a fighter, and that is who you are. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much more I am than that, right? Like, I have a lot more pieces to me. I'm much smarter than that. Fighting is a huge part of me, and I'm a fighter in everything that I do, but I just love fighting. Like, I have a true, serious, deep passion for it. There's nothing that I love more than getting into a fist fight, or elbow fight, even better, with someone. Or Muay Thai fight altogether, right? There's nothing that I love more than that. But there's so much more to me that I have never really expressed. And I feel like that's my season of life now. It's time to, all those things have been kind of pushed to the side. And it's so easy to push those things to the side because of this identity built by others, right? I mean, it's that identity is really not your true identity. Like, my identity has a lot of pieces to it, but when you're constantly barraged by everyone else that's who you are, it kind of becomes who you are.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason we started doing podcasts years ago was I always said to people, and I always knew from knowing you, I was like, Matt's got such a great analytical mind for the sport. Now, what we do on the podcast typically is talk about fighting, of course, so it's still related to fighting, but it's not fighting. You know, it's, you know, obviously guys like Daniel Cormier does a show, Michael Bisping does a show, guys who are retired and don't fight anymore do shows. And that's because they got a mind for fighting. That's part of the reason why I love doing the podcast, and we've been doing these podcasts for many years now, is because while you are a fighter, you also have a mind for fighting. And so that's part of why I like doing the podcast. It's like, let people know that Matt Brown is just not the guy who goes out there and caves in Diego Sanchez's head with an elbow. He's also a guy who can break down a fight. He's also a guy who can understand the money side of the sport, and the sponsor side of the sport, and the mental side of the sport. And that's a big part of why we do this, because I love hearing your side of things, because, again, I'm not a fighter. I've been around the sport, covered the sport for 20 years. I'm still not a fighter, so I still don't have that perspective. You have that perspective, and 100 times more, which is, again, a huge part of the reason I love doing this podcast, because people kind of get locked into, you're just a fighter. You're just a fighter. And even this, what we do right here on this podcast, is beyond fighting. You know, like, it gives you an outlet where you're not just, oh, I'm Matt Brown, the guy who has the most knockouts in welterweight history, second most knockouts in UFC history, all these kind of things. You become a guy who talks about the sport, knows the sport, talks about the fighters in the sport. That's a different avenue. Even though it's still tangentially connected to fighting, it's not fighting. And we talked, it's funny, we did our podcast last week, and after we got done rapping, we ended up talking for like 25 minutes after the podcast about your house flipping business. Like, you've got other things, other irons in the fire that get you excited now that have nothing to do with fighting. We were talking about flipping houses for like a half hour, never once mentioned fighting whatsoever. But like, that's part of it, right? And of course, you have in your gym, you're still going to be training guys, you're still going to be around the sport, you're still going to be doing this podcast. But you have other things, and as you mentioned, like with your kids, like, these are things I remember. I remember specifically having that conversation with you last year after the Court McGee fight when you said, yeah, I'm not going to fight again until X amount of days or dates or whatever. I can't remember the exact timelines. You're like, yeah, my kids got stuff going on. I want to spend this time with my kids. Then they got this going on, that's going on. And I know a lot of fighters who have kids say this is that's time you don't get back. Like
Yeah.
you can't say, oh, you know what, I'll retire 2 years from now. Well, that's 2 years of football or 2 years of wrestling or 2 years of softball or 2 years of whatever that you're missing. You're not going to get that back. They're not going to be 12 years old or 9 years old doing that again. They might be 11 or 12 or 13 doing it, but they're not going to be at that age doing it. You missed that time. And fighting, like it or not, is a selfish sport. When you are in training camp and you're getting ready for a fight, there's a certain level of selfishness you have to get ready to go in there and fucking throw down with another dude.
Yeah, and the big part when it comes to the kids is it's not necessarily about the missing things, because I've never really missed a whole lot. Like I'll just suck it up and switch my training time and you know not get as good a recovery as I should or something. But the bigger part is again just about being present with them. There's so often that I can't go enjoy a Sunday ice cream with them. Now I might go with them and get them ice cream and sit there and watch them eat it, which builds character on its own. But um, or like playing football in the backyard or throwing a baseball or something. Like my one son, he's huge into golf, and it's like, yeah, I'd love to go do 9 with you today, but I got to train and then if I go out there, I'm gonna be exhausted the whole time, and I'm not really present. I'm just kind of like dragging my way through it, and that's not being present for your kids. So even if you're actually not missing a lot of things, the actual ability to be present and in the moment with them and interact with them. Again, I think there's different ways guys handle it different ways. There's certainly some really talented guys out there who don't necessarily put in the hours where they're exhausted every day and they still go out and win fights and win championships and shit. Guys like me, I poured everything that I had into this sport. And there was very few days that I wasn't coming home completely shot. Like my mentality's always been, if I'm not crawling off the mats, I didn't push hard enough. So, to try to balance those things, never really worked for me. And I think that's important in most things that you do, that if you want to be highly successful, again, unless you're one of those anomalies like a John Jones, who can go do a coke binge the week before he fights Daniel Cormier, that's an extremely, extremely rare person that can get away with that. And I'm sure he puts in the time too, though. But someone like me, I'm crawling off the mats, and it's like you're not coming home and playing Monopoly with your kids. You're like, fuck that. I just want to take a shower and lay down, and can we just watch a fucking movie again? You guys play on your tablets or something. So that to me is the bigger part of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think when you talk about fighters, we do tend to lump fighters into one big group and say, well, you're all fighters, but every fighter is different in how they prepare, how they mentally prepare, how they train. What works for one guy does not work for another guy. And I think that has to be said. Like for you to feel ready, for you to feel like you were truly putting everything in to get ready for a fight, you had to be crawling off the mat. Now, maybe John Jones doesn't have to do that. Maybe he can go to the gym for 2 hours a day, get into good workouts, some sparring, some training, and he's good to go, and that's all he needs. That's good for John Jones. That doesn't mean that's going to work for Jim Miller, or maybe that doesn't work for Jose Aldo, who we just saw from. Everyone's got their own way, you know what I mean? So that's what you need, and to change that is going to be changing who you are, and that's just not, that's like to change that. I'm guessing, and I don't want to speak for you, Matt. I'm assuming if you're like, oh yeah, I'll just stop doing this and I'll be more present for my kids, then you're going to feel like you're not putting enough into your fight training. Then you're not putting enough into your fight preparation. Then that's going to come back to haunt you. So it's like one or the other. Something's got to give.
Yeah, you called it. And again, anybody who's highly successful at something has made that sacrifice. Like I've always believed that, like, I need to go into a fight with no reasonable, logical way that I didn't put enough to win, where you can't logic away that I could have done more, right? And I didn't always do that either, by the way. Sometimes, I would take it a little bit easier because of the kids or something, right? And I paid the price for it. I didn't win all my fights. So, there were times that you pay the price for it. But if you want to be the best and you want to be successful at something, that's what you got to fucking do. You got to go everything you got. And there can't be a real work-life balance. That's all bullshit, Um, you got to give it all your heart and soul. And if you don't, then someone else will.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now, for the logistics of this, as we said, I know from knowing you, this has been on your mind for a while now. For the people out there who are going to ask the question, because it's going to come up, so we might as well just answer these questions while we're on the podcast. Which is, again, you making the decision to put the message out there on Instagram on Saturday was not a snap decision. This wasn't like, I'm hanging around on a Saturday afternoon and I'll retire. Again, this has been in the works for a while, and you've had that conversation with the UFC. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn saying, like, you've told this is not a I'm retiring on Saturday and I'm gonna book my fight next Wednesday because I'm gonna change my mind. Like, this is a conversation. Again, I just want to be clear, because Matt, we've joked about this on the show before, like, and we go the quote unquote MMA retirement, where it's like you're kind of retired. I mean, Jose Aldo is a great example of that. I'm retired, and then he fight last weekend, so that's we're so used to that in the sport. I understand the hesitation to believe it's real, but I know for you, this is something like you've been at this for a while. This is not like I was sitting at my daughter's soccer game on Saturday and just decided to retire. This is a conversation you have with the UFC and things like that as well.
Yeah, and the decision to make a post was a snap decision, right? I was just sitting at my daughter's soccer game. I was like, yeah, maybe I should finally post about this. And I think that's where I'm different than most other fighters, or at least a lot of other fighters. I don't know about most, but at least a lot. Is that, again, we were talking about before, I do feel like I have a lot more to my identity. I have other things that are I'm gonna put just as much into, and I'm gonna be successful at them. My gym is gonna be first thing, right? Like and there's a sense of me that's felt like I've kind of failed my employees and my customers at my gym because I put so much energy into fighting. Like, I built this place for them and I haven't grown it to the level that it should be at. And it hurts them more than it hurts me, because I just go fight and make a paycheck and I'm like, cool, whatever. But when you talk about, okay, the ability to give your employees raises, right? I need to generate more revenue at the gym. To give my customers more amenities, well, I have to make more revenue at the gym. To do things like this, to build other people so they can have careers in the martial arts, I have to make more revenue at the gym, right? So there's a big part of me that felt like I've kind of let all them down by being a little bit selfish and just pushing myself to go out there and fight again out of that love, and not really for a paycheck. I haven't never really fought for a paycheck, so to speak, but it's just that love that I have for the sport. Whereas, and that's why I talk about, look, this is just a new season in my life now. It's a different season where now I feel like giving to others, right? And now I'm serving others. I'm going to build this gym into a fucking monster. And these all the employees are going to come up. They're all going to make more money and they're going to get new cars. The people coming into the gym are going to see a difference and they're going to get a better experience for what they're paying for. So, and that's just the season of my life. And again, my identity goes beyond just being a fighter. That's why they say fighters never retire, because that's what happens with these guys. They don't have anything else in them, right? They're some of them are just shallow people, right? Some of them aren't, but they didn't necessarily use their intelligence to build other things. And that's something, again, when I have my own podcast, I want to talk about, like what are some of the things you could be doing as a young fighter or a young athlete, whatever it is that you're doing, or a young person in general, to start building towards a brighter future. And there's a lot of things that that we can be doing. There's a lot of things I wish that I would have done, wish I would have learned earlier. So the type of content that I'm going to be making on a podcast and maybe even more on my Instagram and stuff is me speaking to myself 10, 15 years ago. Like, Matt, this is what you should be doing, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Because I know so many people are in that same situation I was. They're so hungry and all they can think about is, I want to be in the UFC and I want to be a fighter and I want to be a world champion and this and that. And they got these big dreams and that's great. Do that. Put your heart and soul into it and get everything, squeeze all the fucking juice out of it you can. But take a day out of the week, a couple hours out of the week, start building towards something bigger and better that's going to be sustainable, because that's the problem with fighting. Dana said it his damn self. This isn't a career. This is an opportunity. And he's not wrong.
Yeah. I had a conversation with Daniel Cormier after he retired, and Daniel DC had said something to me. I don't want to misquote him, but something to the effect of, he's like, I'll never not miss that feeling of walking out to the cage. I'll never not miss the crowd. I'll never not miss hearing my walkout song. He's like, there is nothing in this world that feels better than stepping in there and competing against another human being and winning, and that just the exhilaration. He's like, you will never feel that again. He's like, and I think I'm paraphrasing here, but he was like, that's probably the hardest thing to walk away from, because you can't find that high in anything else you do. Like, there's nothing like it. And for DC, it went from wrestling to fighting, and he reached the highest. He went to the Olympics, became a 2-division UFC champion, all those kind of things. He's like, you can never replace that. But what you have to be ready to do is find other things to get you, to find satisfaction, to find happiness in. And for him, he has a million businesses out there. He obviously does commentary for the UFC, he does his own podcast, does a YouTube channel. He's as busy now as he ever was as a fighter. He's just not spending, 12 hours or 10 hours or whatever, the 8 hours a day in the gym, 6 hours a day in the gym, whatever it is. He's now putting that effort, that energy into all the other things he's building, and he owns businesses and things like that. Similar to Michael Bisping. They had a very similar mindset when they retired, which was, fighting's done. And to a larger extent, of course, Bisping had that kind of taken away with him with the eye injury and everything. But even that, he was acting, he had other businesses, he made investments, and of course he did the commentary thing. So like he had a I won't say a plan B, he had a new plan A. Like, plan A was fighting, he just had a new plan A. And I think that's what gets lost in it, is because, like, I know you well enough to know, and you have this larger than life personality when you step in the cage. Like, we think of Matt Brown as like the fucking savage human being that goes in there. We have that memory of you elbowing Diego Sanchez and knocking out Eric Silva and knocking out fucking Court McGee and all these different highlight reel things you've done in your career that we all remember, and we envision that, we love it, we appreciate it. But then we forget, like, oh yeah, there's Matt Brown the dad, there's Matt Brown the podcast host, there's Matt Brown the gym owner, there's Matt Brown the coffee brand owner. Like, so, and you set yourself up now to where I know you'll miss fighting to a certain extent. Like, I know that's always going to be there for you. Like, there's going to be a time, like, you're going to go to a card and you're like, fuck, man, I miss this. But you filled your life with enough other things to where it's not going to, like, that's not all you are. And you and I both know this. One mistake a lot of fighters do make is when they retire, they have nothing else. Like, that's all they have. They only had fighting. We can talk about the financial side, of course, too, where, like, once the fighting stops, the money stops, and that is a problem also. But if they don't have anything else, fighting is all they have. That's their only identity, and they can't stay away from it. Then you get guys like I said, like Bisping or Daniel Cormier, or even a Joe Lozon, who's not really, he's never retired, but he's kind of done with fighting. He has a very successful gym, he coaches, and he just kind of does his own thing now. That's the big mistake, is like, you don't have that thing. You do. I'm not saying you won't miss fighting. I know you will to a certain extent, but you have other things. Like, you set yourself up to where fighting does not have to be your identity now.
No, that's exactly it. And when you talk about that high, we're always going to miss that. And that's the drug that we're going to miss. Again, but it's a drug, and it's a one-time thing. You get it maybe 2 or 3 times a year, right? But what I have found to be equally as rewarding is when I walk into my gym and these kids or young kids sometimes, actual kids, sometimes teenagers, sometimes even adults. And they come to me and they tell me about how I changed their life with this gym. And so selfishly, yeah, going in there into a fight and getting that high is the greatest thing ever. But when I've kind of changed my mindset to serving others and giving to others, and when I see that I've given someone a new life, that's it's not the same type of high, but it's little trickles of a high that equal about the same in the long run, right? But you don't get that big burst of a high at one time, like when you step in a cage. And I don't know, like the whole, doing it in front of a crowd and all that. That's just an ego thing, I think, and that never really even did much for me. I mean, obviously, like I love being, in front of the crowd and feeling the energy and everything, but that's just, I think you're just pumped up because all the attention's on you and everything, and that's not really me. And I bet that Joe Lozon is a great example. I bet Cormier would feel the same way with his wrestling kids, right? When you see, these kids, especially I've had my gym 6 years now, seeing these kids that have been there for all 6 years and the way their lives have changed. And, I look at it as like, I put a fork in the road of their life. Like their road was on a straight trajectory on this road, and I created a fork in that, and I took them on a better path. And that's the most heartwarming thing there is, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. When you told the UFC, what was their reaction?
They were shocked, actually. I only talked to one person, but yeah, he was like, "What's going on? Like, what's wrong?" he thought I broke my back or something in a car accident, I guess. But yeah, I mean, they were shocked too. I think I was shocked, like when I first called Sean Shelby and told him I'm pretty sure this is what I'm gonna do. I was at an airport at the time.
And this was not Saturday, just to be clear. Like this wasn't like 2 days ago. This was like earlier.
This is a few months ago. I was at an airport, and I think he returned my call, which is why I was at an airport. And I remember sitting right there in line, getting ready to board the plane, and there's people all over. I was at LAX, I still remember, and I shed a little tear, bro. And then I was like, damn, I can't be crying in front of people. What if someone recognized me? But it hurt bad, man, and it was set in my mind. Like I didn't have any real feelings about it until I actually said it, and then I hung up the phone, and yeah, I shed a motherfucking tear, man. And I guess I do have tears in there somewhere, and that was a one time, and it was very similar yesterday when I posted that. I said, "Damn, it's fucking over, man." Like it's surreal, bro. Like it's hard to believe because a piece of you dies.
I told you this privately. I'll say it publicly. I'm not above saying it publicly. When you posted that yesterday, I read it, and like I did the article, and then I started getting tagged on a lot of stuff because you had tagged me in the post talking about the podcast, and so I was seeing a lot of the responses of like, "Man, you're a legend. I love watching you fight." And I made my little post on Twitter saying, one of the reasons every time we start this podcast, I say my name and I say UFC legend Matt Brown because it's exactly what you are, a fucking legend, and that's true. I mean, I really do mean that. But I got a little emotional too about it yesterday. I was like, fuck, man. Like, this is like my entire knowing you has been through your fight career. Like, we've known each other since 2006, 2005, whatever timeline that was. So almost 20 years of knowing each other. And it's always been your fight career. I've been to a million of your fights. I've been around your fight camps. I've been to your training camps. When you were in Seattle, we stayed in touch. You were in Vegas, we stayed in touch. Like, we never, in this entire 20-year span, I don't think we've ever gone more than a few months without at least like a text or like a, what's going on, bro? Like that kind of thing. And so like when I realized it, when it hit me and I saw these messages, I was like, fuck it. I joked with you yesterday. I was like, fuck, I'm going to roll a tear on the podcast. This fucking sucks. I'm about to get emo on the podcast. But I'll say this. 24 hours later, as we're talking about it now, in a weird way, and I'm not saying this because I'm not still like, it's kind of weird to think of like you being retired from fighting, but I'm weirdly happy for you. I'm weirdly happy for you because, as I said last week, after we get out the podcast, we talked about house flipping for 30 minutes. We've talked about your gym. We've talked about a lot of things off the air that we don't talk about because it's a fight podcast. And, you know, people would be like, what the fuck are you talking about house flipping on a fucking fight podcast? But we talk about a lot of things, and I know you have a lot of other things you want to do. And so in a weird way, now that we've kind of talked about on the show, I'm kind of like, you know, I'm kind of happy for you because now you get to do other things. You get to be other things. You get to be someone that's not immediately UFC fighter Matt Brown, you know, because that, and I understand why they get attached because you're a larger life personality when you fight in the UFC. We just talked about that with how boxing fucks up constantly by not building the personalities of their fighters. But now you get to be other things. Like, I'm excited, dude. I'm so excited to see what you do in this house flipping business. Like, I've been around you and I've seen some of the houses. Like, dude, I'm excited for this. I know how much you put into your gym. We've had this conversations dozens of times about how you've always said, I will end up being a better coach than I was a fighter. I'm excited to see how big that gets. I'm excited to see all the other things you're going to be doing. So yeah, like in a weird way, like while I was very sad and kind of like somber about it yesterday, now as we're talking about it, I'm like, fuck man, this is exciting. Like you got a lot of other things you're going to be doing now that doesn't necessarily involve you getting punched in the fucking face.
Yeah, it's funny sitting here, even talking about it right now. I mean, it's my eyes watering up a little bit because this is the first interview I've done about this, you know, and it's kind of like setting in that this is real, you know, and it's hard to imagine that I'm gonna, you know, go on this life and not fight again. Like I thought I was gonna fight forever too, you know. But like you said, there is so many other pieces to me. There's so many other things that I can do. Um, in terms of like coaching other fighters, I'm not sure that just referring specifically to that, I'm not sure that that'll ever be as big as I kind of thought that it would before, because I know that I am a better coach than I would be a fighter. But that business is a fucking bitch, and fighters are a fucking so. And I have found way more fulfillment in helping just that normal guy, man, that's going through hard times.
Well, yeah, and when I say coaching, I mean coaching your gym, not even coaching fighters, just coaching in general, like just being a coach to your kids' class.
Yeah, things like that, man. It is so much more fulfilling. But in terms of coaching fighters, basically what I do now is I coach friends. You know, if you're my friend, like I'll tell you everything that I know about fighting, and I will give you all the knowledge that you can possibly handle. Hell, I might even just start posting on Instagram, you know, a lot more content about how to be a better fighter, things like that. But, oh, excuse me. But the actual, you know, turning into like an ATT or a Jackson or AK or something, like I just don't even have interest in that anymore. But using the martial arts as a tool to build human beings and build this world into a better place, I think it can go a very long way. And that's one of the reasons I don't get really heavily into like politics or, you know, the weak culture we have and all this shit, which is all, you know, is what it is. But it's like, what are you doing to change that shit, right? What are you doing to change your local community? You know, not what are you posting on Instagram to try to get clicks and get people fired up. It's what are you know, are you going to your local community center and helping kids? Are you going to, you know, a gym and teaching a class? And that's what I respect, you know, is people doing that. And I would say the same even about politics in general. Everybody wants to bitch and moan about everything, but it's like, you know, are you passing out flyers? Are you going and talking? Are you campaigning for your local mayor or whatever? And so I don't know. That's a little bit of a side tangent there, but yeah, and that's just where my again where the season of my life is now. You know, let's build this local community into the strongest motherfuckers they can be. and give people a place to come strengthen their hearts, their souls, their bodies, and their minds. And that's going to be my contribution to the world. And hopefully, through fighting, I have inspired or motivated or inspired or whatever you want to call it, enough people that it makes an impact in the world.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And of all the things, listen, be honest, Matt, though, of all the things, listen, I know there's going to be things about fighting that you're going to miss, even though you're not, I mean, while you're not fighting, you're still training, you're still becoming a better martial artist. You're just not going and fucking doing it in the octagon. But be honest, you're not going to miss the fucking USADA person showing up at 3 o'clock in the morning to drug test. Be honest now. That's like a perk of this retirement, right? Like when you say retire from UFC, that's a perk. It's not having the drug tester show up at your gym right after you just went to the bathroom and like, yeah, I need a urine sample. You're like, fuck, couldn't have been here 10 minutes earlier.
Yeah, I would make their lives miserable too. Like they would show up at 8 in the morning and I'll be like, oh, I got to go train. So you got to follow me to the gym. And then I still don't have to pee. So I'd start training and it'd be like 2 hours later, they'd just be sitting there because they got to watch you the whole time, and I'd be like, all right, I'm ready to pee now. But man, there was only one time they really got me. And that was when I got back from a trip. I forget what I was doing. I took my kids somewhere. I think it went to like a fucking pumpkin patch or some stupid shit, and I mean, who thought I would go to a fucking pumpkin patch? But there I was. And, I come back, it was like 11 o'clock at night. And I get home, go straight to the pisser, getting ready to go to bed, hear the knock on the door. Who the fuck's knocking on my door, right? And there they are. So I done emptied my bladder. I'm ready to go to bed. It took me like 2 hours to finally have to pee again, chugging water, finally get enough pee in there because you have to fill it up a certain amount too, right? So finally get enough in there. And then all night, every hour on the hour, like clockwork, I'm getting up and taking a piss. Don't sleep at all. Honestly, that was the only bad experience I ever had with them. Other than that, I was like one of the things that pisses me off when you're talking about the USADA is that, I never once claimed a supplement. They always ask you, okay, what supplements do you take? Do you need to claim anything? And dude, I never once claimed a single thing. I was like, dude, just take my fucking pee and go. Like, I'm not taking shit. I'm not worried about it. And I never pop for anything. And I take all kinds of crazy shit. Yeah, I take some sketchy fucking supplements, bro. And I'm that experimenter, I'm like, dude, I need to try this, like, see if it works. And I took all kinds of shit. I'd go to fucking GNC and try the sketchiest shit they had. Never pop once, bro. So when these people pop and like, oh, tainted supplement, I'm like, sure it happens. And I'm sure it has happened, but I don't go for it.
Yeah, but at least you don't have to worry about that anymore. That's one positive. You're like, at least there's no more drug testers showing up at the gym.
Yeah, that's the point you're getting at. And that can be annoying, but it never really bothered me, to be honest. And to be honest, I think the perks of it, which is we'd have to do a whole podcast on that. It is keeping people clean unless they got enough money to not be clean. So there's like pros and cons to it.
If you got enough money, you can get away with pretty much anything. Just look at our legal system. You got enough money, you can get away with pretty much anything in this country. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not trying to make some political statement here, but you and I both know if you got enough high priced lawyers and enough money, you can get out of pretty much anything you want to get out of, or you can, in this case, you're not going to test positive for something. Trust me. So yeah.
Yeah. Unless you're Epstein, he didn't have enough money.
Yeah, but that's a whole other subject. Who killed him?
We don't get off on too far.
Yeah, we don't get on that. I assume you probably not, I know you well enough. You probably ain't thought about this, but I'm gonna bring it up because I think it's kind of cool. Do you realize you're going to go out on a win? You knocked out Court McGee in that last fight. Like, at the end of the day, I know, like, because people will think, oh wow, your fight was basically a year ago when you fought Court McGee. You knocked him out. You could have come back and fought 10 more times and I would have been in your corner every single time. And I'm glad, whatever. But like, it is rare that a guy gets to go out on a win. And that gets to be the last highlight is that moment you knocked out Court McGee. I'm like, this is pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's going to be interesting how people look at that when, I don't know, 20, 30 years from now or whatever. Because usually if I looked back in the history books, I was like, oh, he went out on a win. Like something probably happened to him. He probably, died in a car accident or something happened. And yeah, it wasn't that case for me. Yeah, but if you see someone that went out on a few losses, like okay, he figured it out finally and got beat up enough, and that's the standard way that we go out of this sport. And again, it's everybody. That's the in the using the drug analogy that's right before they go to rehab, right? You know,
Yeah.
like it's not doing what it used to do, and it's starting to really negatively affect your life, and because you're still chasing that same fucking high, man. And
Yeah, well, and one of the reasons why, like, we all have the joke about the MMA retirements is because guys or girls, for that matter, tend to do it in emotional situations. Right after a fight, tons of times you're still in the cage. I'm hanging up, lay down the gloves, and it's a cool moment. Like I watch wrestling enough. Like it's cool when they leave their shoes in the middle of the mat. Like it's a cool moment when that happens, and we appreciate the photo op and like it's way you can say goodbye to the crowd. I get all that, but in that emotional moment, like I know I've said this to you, Matt. I said like fighters should have like a 5-minute window after every fight to where they can say anything and we can never hold it against them. Because when you're in that, like I know guys I've talked to who don't even remember what they say in that moment. They're just so fucking jazzed up and pumping with testosterone. They're not even thinking about adrenaline. They're not even thinking about what they just said. Like, who did I call out? What did I just say? I'm just like, so like the fact that like you fought court last year, you did other things in your life, you had other things going on. You kind of saw, time off from fighting where you were doing other things, your kids, the other businesses, things you were doing. Full circle. When that call came in, they said, "Hey, do you want to fight again?" You didn't get that electric, the electricity going up to your spine. Didn't get that same feeling. And you kind of knew, but you still even then took time because I know that wasn't yesterday. It was a few months ago. You took time after that, and then you told the UFC, and now, like, and so I think that's like again. I don't want to speak for I kind of pose this as a question more than anything because immediately people are going to be like, well, you retired on Saturday. Is it going to be 6 months or 9 months before you book your next fight? Now, knowing you as well as I do, Matt, I feel like there is resolve in this decision. This isn't a flippant thing. This isn't like I was sitting around my daughter's soccer meet and just decided to retire. Yes, that's how you made the announcement, but that's not your decision. I think you're like you are going to have a lot of other things going on. So I hate even use the word retire. I have to use the word retire so people aren't confused when I say you're not retired. You're not retired because you still have 50 other businesses and things you're doing. But as far as fighting goes, I really do believe like fighting is done in that regard. Like I don't think you're the kind of guy who's going to be like 6 months from now, like, yeah, I made a bad call. You're doing this like you've thought about this. This isn't something you just decided. Like you knocked out Court McGee and said, you know what, this is cool. Great crowd, big knockout. Yeah, let's just go and call it a career. And then fucking the call comes in 3 months later, and you're like, I want to do it again.
No, that's exactly it. And I thought about today just making another post to saying, psych bitches, I'm coming back like 6 weeks. Fuck y'all. Yeah, thanks for the attention. But no, I thought about it for a long time and I'm pretty clear on it. Or I'm very clear on it. Yeah, the reason that it took so long for me to announce it, the reason it took so long for me to call UFC was just a courage thing, right? Like you again, piece of you dies and you got to break off of that identity somehow. And it was just that, growing the balls to do that, man. And it's not an easy thing again, when that's your identity and you're like, well, who the fuck am I going to be? Like, what am I going to do? So I've basically already been living that next life in this meantime anyway, except, I have been in the gym a lot and still training a lot. I still love punching people and getting punched and everything. But, again, it just took the courage to do it, man. That's all it came down to. And I think that's why it ended up happening at my daughter's soccer game in the middle of the day where, I was just bored and was like, I need a post. All right, well, let's just fucking do it versus, sitting at home, meditating about it or ruminating on it and saying, nah, fuck that. I'm not doing it now. We'll figure it out later, and just kicking that can down the road.
It's kind of perfect though, right? Because like that moment, I'm sure in that soccer meet, even though you're fucking roasting and hanging out with a bunch of Karens, it was kind of like that's kind of like the perfect that's like the perfect like analogy of why you're doing this. Like these are like this is being present, right? Like you were present for your daughter at a 3-hour soccer meet, and I mean, you're just like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like these are the things being present for.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You said like today like I said, I made a video for Chael Sonnen, and um, I I was way more focused on the game than I had ever been, and it was a great game. And I kind of stopped and I thought to myself, dude, like how many games like this has she had? I was like really deeply into the game. I thought, dude, how many has she had like this that I just didn't even realize it was happening? Because I mean, sometimes like I would take her to a game and I would go for a run, or you know, just have my mind elsewhere. So planning my next training session or whatever it might be. So, yeah, that hit hard, man, when that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's like I said, man. That's again. So when they say the word retire, not really retired. Retired from fighting, but not retired from other things. You got 50 other things
You
going
know,
on. There's always gonna be.
there's like two or three people that ever actually retire, and people. There's like a GSP Anderson who didn't actually retire. He kept fighting. Um, Connor could retire if he wanted to. John Jones. There's so few people that can actually like truly retire. Because to me, what retirement means is like you're golfing all day and you're fucking chilling. You're taking care of your garden and your lawn. Like that's your biggest worry of the day. We're just moving to a different profession. Just making money in different ways, and that's exactly why I keep saying, look, it's just a different season in my life. It's not. I'm not calling it retirement, at least to me. You notice on my Instagram or posts, like or social media posts, I didn't put the word retire anyway. I said I'm out, and this is a new season. I'm just doing different things now.
Yeah, I have to like you have to use the word retirement because people are like, "Oh, he didn't say retirement; he's still fighting." Like, no, you're not fighting, just not retired from working. Like, some people will never retire from anything. Like, I'll never retire. I know me. Like, I'm one of those people. I need work. Like, I need to be busy. I struggle to relax. Like, I have a problem with that. Like, I struggle to just sit and do nothing. I don't like to just sit and do nothing. But you want to know when I knew the moment that Matt Brown had fully changed, when you become a different person. A lot of different things have happened in your life, but the moment I knew that I was dealing with a totally different Matt Brown was the day you called me and you said, "Yeah, man, I'm going golfing today." And I was like, "What the fuck? Matt's going golfing?" And then I got a photo of you and our buddy Loper out golfing. I was like, "All right, Matt Brown's completely changed now. He's not golfing right now, wearing fucking golfing pants and golfing. Like, what's going on here?"
Wearing a polo.
Yeah, wearing a polo. Like, who is this? What's going on?
No, that's exactly right. And sorry. Um, yeah, that's it, man. So I'm just like I said, move on, and it's not retiring. I'm the same as you. Like I'm never going to truly retire. I think that's the whole purpose of life, man. Like take what I imagine like a beautiful, successful life is, make your perfect day and then stack as many of those as you can on top of another, right? That's success in life. And to me, that's not sitting around on the beach drinking margaritas. That's not going golfing every day. That's not, sitting around with the HOA people, about my condo in Florida. My perfect part of my perfect day is working, having a purpose, working towards something. And right now, my purpose is, like I said, it's going to be serving others. So, let's fucking go, man. Let's build some badass shit, and let's flip some houses, build better communities. Let's build a gym, build stronger people, and I'm pretty stoked for it. To be honest, even though I cry about it a little bit.
And enjoy some fucking ice cream every now and again. Jesus Christ, man. Like a little fucking snack every now and again, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, when I first got off the phone with Sean Shelby and told him I'd retired, I went on a little binge, I put on some pounds, bro, because it was like depression eating, like I was so sad. I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Might as well get fat. But then I'm kind of over that now. And I'm back to, I want to be fucking ripped and rare and raw and rich, man.
I love it. And just to be clear for people out there, we're talking like this is a very different episode for us, but you're still gonna be doing the podcast. So like it's not like we're not gonna be talking about fighting and doing shit like that. And that's part of it. Like I said, man, I know like again, talking to Cormier and Bisping, like that was a big part of it. Like they weren't fighting, but they still liked fighting. So like they didn't stop liking fighting. So now they just get to talk about fighting and they get to analyze fighting. And so yeah, you're still gonna be around fighting. Like it's not like you're gonna just disappear off the fucking face of the earth. And what was that? Who was that dude? Oh fuck! Was it Cole? Is it Cole Conrad? Is that his name? The guy who fought? He was a wrestler. And he fought in Bellator. He was like their heavyweight champion. Then he just retired and just disappeared off the face of the earth. Remember him? I think he wrestled in Minnesota. I remember that name correct? Cole Conrad, right?
Yeah.
He was Bellator heavyweight champion. He retired and then he just fought. I think he works in like the milk industry, the dairy industry now. So he's like a executive at a dairy company. But he just like walked away and we never heard from him again. He fell into like the Bermuda Triangle and just like we never heard from him again.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like that, and that's what this podcast will be about, right? We're still going to keep talking about fighting. I still love fighting, you know, and maybe we can get into even more of the technical aspects of fighting. That's what I love about it, right? Is the puzzle and the what do you say, the strategy and the tactics. Like that's what I love about it. Now and again, I'm gonna start my own podcast, hopefully sooner than later, and that way I don't really have to talk about fighting on that. Of course I will. Everything's going to be analogous to fighting, but we'll talk about fucking real estate and making money and business and fitness, nutrition, and living healthy, and like I was saying before, like men's issues and I hate even calling them issues, but the things that we deal with as men and how to be a better man, and and again, a lot of it's going to be preaching to myself, like what should 20-year-old Matt should have been doing, not drinking and partying, right? He should have had fucking 43-year-old Matt talking to him and saying, do this. And, and hopefully that's a powerful thing for people.
Does this mean, hold on here, does this mean that I'm going to be able to drag you out to more metal concerts now and get you out of the fucking house to go to more metal concerts now? Because every time I'm like, dude, there's a show coming up. And you're like, yeah, I can't go.
Yeah, I mean, I'll fucking go. You going to the Sonic Temple? Like, we'll fucking go to that,
I'm going to Incarceration for sure. I'm not sure if I'm going to Sonic Temple yet. I know I'm going to Incarceration for sure because that's July. That up in Mansfield. Yeah.
Okay. So. Yeah, maybe we'll do that. But my only problem with metal concerts now, I mean, I'm a huge metalhead and I love watching it. Is like I'm such a fucking grandpa. Like I want to sit. Either I'm either a prima donna, I got to have like a fucking suite, or be side stage, backstage, or if I'm in the crowd, like I just want to be in the back and I just want to observe, people watch and observe the fucking, the production and the lighting and the, oh, he missed a note right there, like I'm checking out their performance and shit, and I'm like, dude, I could do that on fucking YouTube. Like, why am I out here in 90-degree weather doing this shit?
Normally I like going to shows. I go to a lot of shows. I went to Asking Alexandria here in Columbus last week. It's a good show. They played with it was them and Memphis May I and a band I like called The Word Alive. A really good show. Never been to the Blue. What's it called? The Bluestone. I'd never been to the Bluestone before here in Columbus. It's a church that got converted into a concert hall. I'd never been there before. Hot as fuck. It was so hot in there. I mean, it was like had to be 100 degrees. Like it was so blistering hot in there. But I got in there and I basically walked down. It was a sold out show. And that's when I see a sold out show, it makes me almost not want to go to the show. Because when they sell out a show, it's fucking crowded. And I got down in the crowd and I stood in the back and I had just enough room to where I didn't have people touching me, which That's like a big thing with me. I don't want you touching me. Like, I don't want to be bumping up against people. And it was fun. It was a good show. Acoustics in the place weren't that great. I was kind of bummed. Like, the sound wasn't as good there as it was at some of the other venues here in Columbus, but still a fun show. But I remember I went and saw Bad Omens here in Columbus at Kimba Live, which for people who aren't from here, it's another venue, but it was an outdoor show. And they have a big giant lawn where you can sit, and generally you could be kind of, even if it was a sold out show, you can kind of be there. But I like being closer, so I got down in the fucking crowd. That was like the most social anxiety I've dealt with in forever, because I was like people bumping into me and fucking walking by me, and it was just. But I'm 6'3", so I have like the advantage of being able to see over people, so I don't mind being like on the ground level. I don't need to be like elevated to see the crowd. But like that was one show where I was just like at the end, I was like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. Like I'm about to rage and just fucking start throwing elbows in this place. But generally I'm like in the back. I want to be close, but not too close. I don't want people touching me, and I want to be able to like just focus on the show.
Dude, I'm the same way, man. I just want to focus on the show. I was just talking to a girl a little bit ago about that, and yeah, I'm just such a grandpa with it now, bro. And it doesn't like excite me like it used to, because I used to go in the mosh pit. I'd have to be right up front. Have to, didn't even really enjoy the show. It was like, just how fucking rowdy can I get? And now it's about like he missed that note, or oh, I like how he's jumping over there, how he's holding his guitar. I'm gonna have to try that. It is. I feel like such a weeb when I do it.
Sonic Temple got ruined for me because we went a few years ago when our buddy Zoltan Bathory from Five Finger Death Punch got us in, and we got to go backstage. And we got to go side stage. Like they had like a little balcony set up so you could stand on the balcony, like 2 rows of people, like maybe like 15 people. And you're basically staring down onto the stage. And that was like the coolest experience ever. And then like the next year I went because Avenged Sevenfold and Slayer and stuff were playing. And I was just in the crowd and I was like, this fucking sucks. Like, this isn't fun. Like, I'm just in the back of like a football stadium, like watching from like 100 yards away. This isn't fun. So yeah, I'm not a big festival guy to begin with, but like that ruined it for me. I'm totally being bougie right now. That ruined it for me. I'm like 3 feet away from the stage. We're up in our special little section, no one around. We get to go backstage into like air conditioning. And yeah, the next year when I was back in the crowd again, I was like, this sucks.
Well, hopefully I get to Sonic Temple this year and get up in the media behind the glass, right? Like that's the best spot, and just watch it on the TV. Look out through the glass and see the TV. That's where I sat last year, except for the side stage. I had to go see Avatar, and man, they put on one of the best shows. Like I want to see them on their own one day, because they do the short sets at festivals, which is another reason why the festivals suck. But dude, I gotta see them by themselves sometimes. They put on a ridiculously good show.
There's like 20 bands playing at Sonic Temple this year that I love, but they're all playing the early sets, and I know they're going to play like 20 minutes. Like Machine Head's playing, and I love Machine Head, but like a lot of Machine Head's best songs are 10 minutes long. I know they're not playing the 10-minute song. I know they're not going to have time to play the 10-minute song, so I'm kind of like, I don't know. I just like, do I really want to go? Because I'm like, I know what it's going to be like. I know I'm going to get disappointed to see like one of my favorite bands play for like 25 minutes.
Yeah, no, same here, man. And like I seen Perfect Circle last year, and they obviously Maynard puts on one of the best shows you could ever imagine. And it was like 30 minutes. I was like, dude, they probably took 3 hours to set this thing up, like all the costumes and everything, and then it played for 30 minutes. Like it's fucking ridiculous. So
yeah.
So anyway, yeah, maybe we'll get to do some more shows now. Maybe we'll see. My biggest problem, actually, beyond even all that, is, dude, I like being in bed at like 9:30, 10. Like I like getting up, seeing the sunrise, getting in the cold plunge from Redwood Outdoors. Shameless plug. Use code Immortal250 to save on that shit. And it's badass. I get up the cold plunge at the crack of dawn, watch the sun rise while I'm sitting in there freezing my balls off. And it's a beautiful thing, man. Go check out the garden first thing in the morning, see if anything happened. And, like I'm a little bit of a grandpa,
I was your old fucking man. Jesus Christ, man. Jesus, man. Just going to bed fucking early, getting up early, man. Fuck, what's going on there? You got the early bird special over there? What's going on, Matt? Like,
It feels good, man. It feels
Eating
real
dinner,
good.
eating dinner at 2:30 in the afternoon. You know.
This podcast is the only thing I stay up late for.
See, I love it. I love it. I appreciate that, though. All right. That's our show for this week. Of course, we had to do a special with Matt making the big announcement. Of course, we'll get back to normal stuff, kind of talk about fighting next week and everything else going on. I feel like we need to start doing like Matt's metal review on there. We need to start talking more music. I always like when we talk music on it.
Well, that's what I'm doing my own podcast for, bro. We'll get you on there and we'll do the metal show. Like All That Remains had a new single today. Fucking, there's always something new coming out, man.
Yeah, my guys in Starset from here in Columbus, Ohio, they just dropped a new single too. It's actually pretty heavy. I was pretty impressed by that. So yeah, I heard the new one from All That Remains too. So
yeah, that's what my podcast is going to be for, bro. We can talk about anything, anytime that matters.
I love it. I love it. All right, folks, we appreciate everyone tuning in. Matt, where else? Obviously, again, we said you got a million things going on. Where else can people show support? What you got going on beyond fighting now?
At I Am the Immortal, Instagram and Twitter, The Immortal Matt Brown on Facebook, The Immortal Coffee, at The Immortal Coffee, everywhere you can get on social. And yeah, man, check out the best creatine gummies at try_create. And of course, I just mentioned it, Redwood Outdoor Saunas. Use code Immortal250. Use code Immortal for the creatine gummies. We got it all going on, bro. We got a little bit of everything.
I love it. We'll be back next week with another edition of the show. Make sure you check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and of course, over on the best website in the world, MMAfighting.com. For Matt Brown, I am Damon Martin. We will see you guys next week for another edition of The Fighter versus the Writer. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you then.